Hi, Barietta. How are you?
Hi, doing good.
Great.
And you?
Yeah, I'm great. It's super nice to see you on camera. I think I've looked at the same profile picture of you for the last, I don't even know how many months it's been.
I
And
know. I haven't even updated it either. That's like an old photo too.
yeah, I think you're like blonde and like, anyway,
No, the lighting actually hit my hair a certain way. I had dark hair in that.
anyway, it's nice to see your face and hear your voice. I have heard your voice on, on Facebook comments and stuff for a very long time now. Barietta Perez is your
Yeah.
name, and we see you popping up all over the place with all kinds of insights, questions, provocative stuff. Sometimes we've clashed on things, and I'm super looking forward to getting to know you, as I'm sure
Yeah.
everyone else is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so why don't you so one thing that comes up for me that again I really don't know you other than exchanging a little bit that comes up often is you call yourself a Bible teacher. So
Yeah.
that's one thing I would love to talk about because that is a very I almost want to say audacious title for a woman to claim and people probably give you a hard time.
Not necessarily actually, surprisingly, at least not yet. Maybe it'll come later on because I don't have like that many followers, like I'm not out there yet. Maybe it'll come later with more attention.
Okay.
I'm just kind of starting out, mostly close people-ish, stuff like that. But yeah, so the reason why, I mean, at the beginning, it wasn't my intentions wasn't to be a teacher, quote unquote. It was more like about 2 years ago. I was kind of lukewarm, and it was a pattern of being lukewarm on and off. But 2 years ago was really the turning point because I was like, I can't keep living like this. Like something has to change. And I grew up Pentecostal, right, in the Pentecostal church. And so that would be considered Protestant and I guess antinomian now that I know those terms. But I didn't know that at the time. I just thought, I'm a Christian. I grew up in this my entire life. I'm just kind of struggling. I'm just kind of, teeter tottering. And when I realized I couldn't keep living this way, I was thinking, okay, well, if Jesus comes back any moment, which I thought it was going to be any moment, but now I know it's a certain time frame. So I was like, if he comes back any moment, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to be with him. I'm going to be left behind. I'm going to go through the tribulation, all the things that, were kind of drilled into our head. And it's good to be prepared and want to be, ready for his return, but not in that kind of way where it kind of is more, I guess, like fear based, kind of like fear mongering, if that makes sense. So I was like, okay, well, if this is the case, if I'm recognizing that I'm lukewarm, if I'm recognizing that I'm not going to be ready for his return, or even if I die, because I know I'm chronically ill, so anything could happen, or even an accident, a freak accident, right? So I'm like, I just know I'm not going to make it to heaven. I just knew I was self-aware that I wasn't living a proper life, even for the standards of antinomianism. Like I was like bad. So no, I don't mean like, cussing and things like that, but just, to be an active member in church. That's what I
Okay,
mean
so can
by
I
it.
pause you for a minute? Because this is one of the things we both had a little conversation about on Once Saved, Always Saved. So I don't know much about any denominations because I went to a Baptist church for a few months and then
Mm-hmm.
I ran away.
Yeah.
Um, so in the Pentecostal church, do they not as much teach Once Saved, Always Saved? Because if you
No.
are aware, oh, can you tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, it's very much like they believe that if you don't work out your own salvation, that you're not going to make it. Like, but they kind of take it to the other extreme though. Like they say that if you sinned and then you die the next 5 minutes after you sinned, like that's it because you didn't get to repent. But I actually now after studying and stuff like that, I know that that's actually the things that grace covers. Like if you made a mistake and you happen to die 5 minutes after you sin, I think that's one of the things that is it's and especially if it wasn't done like rebelliously, like on purpose. I feel like, oh my, I fell into sin and then boom, a car hits you. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to just automatically go to hell. But at that time, that's what I grew up with. That's what was in my head. Like any little thing, even one moment, and then I die, and then boom, hell. You know what I mean? And then the doctrine of immediately in hell too. Like it's not even resting in the grave. It's just immediately in hell or immediately in heaven, and that's it. So, that kind of stuff really drove me to want to study how can I avoid, being here for the tribulation, or how can I avoid whatever it is the case that I was taught. And so I cracked open the most difficult book, which would be Revelation, right? I'm like, so this is the part where it talks about these things. So let me know what I have to do to avoid these things, right? So actually cracking that book open first is what led me to this series from Walter Veith called Total Onslaught. He is Seventh Day Adventist, but I took the good and left the bad because, you know, a lot of that was very good information, you know, talking about the beast and the mark and all these things. So I learned, at least to my knowledge, this is what I have learned. Everyone can take this with a grain of salt, but I learned that keeping the Sabbath, the fourth commandment, is the sign of God. And so there's an opposite sign, which the enemy would have. And if God has a day, then the enemy would be like, then I'll take a day too, and I'll make it Sunday. And so keeping Sunday as a Sabbath would be, in my knowledge, right, the beast's mark and the, you know, the Antichrist kind of situation, because
Okay,
it's
I
about
didn't
worship.
realize. So is that, and again, because I don't know the denomination of Pentecostalism, nor do I know Seventh Day Adventist. So that is a doctrine that is something that you picked up from that church.
Yes, yeah, from
Okay.
Seventh Day Adventist. So there was like a lot of evidence that this series went into. It was like 36 videos, and each one is like an hour plus long. So I was like hours looking into this stuff, looking at the information that he had about the Catholic Church and the history and the roots and what they did. And antinomianism came through them, and Constantine, and all these things, and sun worship and calendar changes. So I was like really looking into all that. And what really caught my attention was, okay, well, if the Sabbath is this big important thing that's a sign between us and God, and it still stands, it never went away, Jesus didn't become our Sabbath, I was like, what else was I taught wrong? And if this still stands, then the whole Torah must still stand. And that was really like the beginning of everything. I was like, all right, I need to keep searching, you
So
know. And then
into
I saw the
so
definition, sorry, of antinomianism. I saw the, you know, like anomia, antinomian, and that was really like, whoa, you know what I mean? To see that Greek word and the definition of it and all the passages that talk about it.
so did you see that through Seventh Day Adventist? Because I don't know what is different from them versus what I think you and I, for the most part, believe
Mm-hmm.
the same thing, but from what I understand, Seventh Day Adventist keeps the Saturday Sabbath. So now you're telling me they believe Sunday is the mark of the beast,
Yeah.
Saturday is the mark
Mm-hmm.
of God.
Yeah. So they keep Sabbath. So when I was looking into this, I'm like, okay, so they seem to have the most truth out of all the Christian branches. You know, they're closer to it. But when I started to study more and I saw it's not just the Sabbath, it's the feast days, it's the diet. So I'm like, okay, they're the closest, but they're not there fully.
Okay,
And I
so they
started to
don't
realize,
necessarily eat clean and they
yeah.
don't do
Yeah,
the
they don't
feast
keep the
days.
feast. They think that those things were done away with. So, you know, I like that they have the Sabbath part. They're right on that. They need to keep going down that track and seeing we need all of this, you know. But at least in the meantime, they're keeping the Sabbath, and I think that's a good thing. I think, like I said, they're closer to all the other ones. And so I started to realize, okay, well then they might be closest, but there's still none of the denominations are the truth. None of, like, zero, zero. There's no denomination that is, because Jesus didn't come to make any denominations. He came to turn us back to the Father's ways. And so that's what really, like, there's just no denomination. We're just Torah observant. We're messianic. You know, I don't really like to say I'm Jewish. If anyone wants to call me that, that's on them. But I'm just Torah observant. I'm messianic. You know, like that's what I try to keep it to. Sometimes I'll say I'm Christian so people can kind of understand that I still believe in Christ, because sometimes when they hear Torah, they automatically go to, you're Jewish, you're a Judaizer, you're this, you're that, you're legalist, you're Pharisee. And then they're like, oh, you must not believe in any of the New Testament or Paul or this and that. And it's like, no, I believe the entire Bible. The whole thing is beautiful and amazing, and it's continual, consistent. It doesn't contradict itself. Like one interprets the other, one points to the other, and this one points back to the other one. You know, so it's like connected together. I don't see how it's such a big problem. Like, to me, it doesn't fit in my head. You know what I mean? The way that my brain kind of works logically, or the way I behave sometimes, I'm like, okay, I try to be nice to people, and when people aren't nice to me back, I'm like, it doesn't compute in my head. You know what I mean? I'm that kind of brain where it doesn't compute to me. I know I have to realize, like, the world is just, it's like that. It's not going to be what you put out into it all the time, and rarely, actually, not even going to be rarely.
So what
So,
is
you know,
the timeline with so you grew up in the Pentecostal church, you said you were starting to feel like you were too lukewarm. When was that?
yeah, that was like about 2 years ago, I would say. I know it was, I think in the spring leading into summer. I know like the season that I know I was studying and it was hot outside and stuff. I remember like driving home from dialysis. I would be like listening to the video series, just crying and like repenting. Like, I'm so sorry. I've just lived in sin. I didn't know, but I still did, right? Because people, I think, feel like, oh, if you don't know, then it doesn't count. But there are several passages in the Old Testament and New Testament that I know in the Old Testament there's like God has laws for if you sin unintentionally. So then it's telling you right there, if you find out later that you did something in the past, you need to go fix that. And in the future too, in the New Testament, Jesus talks about the two servants that they didn't do the master's will. One of them knew what it was and didn't do it on purpose, and the other one didn't know and didn't do anything because he didn't know. But they both got a beating, and the one who didn't know got it less. So you're still getting some consequence. You're just getting less. And I would rather not have any at all. I'd rather have no beating. Thank you. No, thank you. No beating. So that's what I try to tell people that, like, especially when you're telling them the truth, sometimes they'll be like, oh, don't tell me that because I don't want to know. Well, God heard you say that. God is going to call you to account on the judgment day. What happened with, the Torah? Oh, well, I didn't know. Well, Barry tried to tell you, and you literally told her not to tell you so that you don't know, so that you're not held accountable. But I saw your heart. You know what I mean? So that's a very dangerous thing that people are, kind of playing with by saying that and kind of shutting us down when we're trying to tell them about the truth, and especially me, being a person that like loves others too much to not tell them anything, to the point where I'm like stubborn about it, like I probably shouldn't push as much as I do. But like I said, it's just that love. It's like, I don't want them to be lost, especially my loved ones, like I want to see them all there. And I know it's a reality that not all of them will be, but at least, I will have tried. Right. And the Bible also tells us that if we see somebody sinning and we don't warn them, then their blood is on our hands. But if we do warn them and they don't change, then their blood is on their own hands, so that I kind of keep that in mind as well. At least I said something. At least I planted the seed. At least I lived my life in a way that shone a light onto them. And then there's no excuse. God is going to say, whether or not you asked very deep theological questions, you saw her living it out. You saw her keeping the Sabbath and changing her diet, even if it was difficult to do, because I feel like people think that we're trying to be actually a replacement of Jesus. No, we're trying to imitate him. We can't actually do it perfectly like him. So of course we're going to fail. And that's what grace is there for, right? Like law and grace, they're not enemies. They're not, they literally can't even exist without the other one. Like since the beginning, since the Garden of Eden, I tell people, what is the first thing after Adam and Eve sinned that God did? He literally gave them grace. He could have just squashed them like a bug, but he didn't. He was like, you know what? I'm going to, here's your consequences first, because I'm still God. I'm still holy. I need to, do justice. And then after that, I'm going to comfort you and tell you some prophecies and some promises, right? I'm going to make a covenant with you that there's a Messiah coming. That is literally mercy. That is grace. Like, I don't understand how Old Testament is bad God or New Testament is good God. You know what I mean? Like, no, I don't. So, and I've never really liked that idea, even when I wasn't in Torah, that like God is just all bad. I think people leave out like what humans did to get God to do something. Like the fact that a flood had to happen to wipe out the entire earth. It wasn't just a few criminals and everybody was innocent. No, the entire earth was full of sin and corrupted, and God like almost regretted basically making people. That's how bad they made him feel about creation. So they leave the part out that humans drove him to that, but they just say, oh, look, he flooded the earth. What a horrible God. You know what I mean? I've never liked that, even when I was in antinomianism, because I joined a lot of Facebook groups with atheists and debating and things like that. So I kind of got some experience there with, like if a point was brought up and I didn't know the answer, or I was made to look dumb because they got the evidence that I didn't have, I was like, I don't like that feeling. I don't like being humiliated like that. So I need to study to know my stuff, to know what I believe. And there's a verse about that too. Paul says to have an answer for the hope that we have, right? So for all the things that we believe, we need to know why we believe those things. So that really started the early journey, like I guess the neo journey. I don't know how to describe that, right? Like the pre-journey of all this. It was like God was laying foundations to get where I got now, because one topic would lead to another, until I had basic knowledge of things. And then when I got to the Sabbath topic, everything kind of clicked and my brain just like flooded with information.
Yeah, but you're
I'm
still
like,
only talking about within the last 2 years.
Before 2 years, I had been studying already, like, because I just loved, like, I fell in love with studying the Bible in general. So I would study things within Pentecostalism, right? But I found some things that didn't make sense, and I would ask about it, and they kind of like didn't give a good answer. But I was like, okay, I mean, it doesn't make sense, but I mean, whatever. You're the pastor, you're the leader, you're this, you're that. So, all right. So I kind of brushed some things off until later when I came to this. I finally went back to some things I had seen, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it was there. I had already seen this or that, you know? So it was like really cool to have everything click together and like have that knowledge. And another part of that is that when I was starting this journey about 2 years ago, I saw this passage in James 1:5 where it says, whoever lacks wisdom, let him ask of the Lord, who gives generously and without reproach, and he will give to them. And so I was like, okay, God, this seems like a promise that is in your word that I want to redeem because I need wisdom, I need knowledge, I need understanding. You're the one who wrote it. Like there's people, all voices from all different sides saying different things. Because at that time I had a friend that she was a friend of a friend in high school, and she wasn't a believer at the time. So my friend and her were kind of like unequally yoked, but I was like, okay, whatever. You guys are friends, it's on you. So later on, I ended up finding out that she became a believer. And I was like, oh, great. Like, you're a believer now. That's great. Praise God. Let's just get together. And we are the ones that became close. But I think she had started in Calvinism, and then she jumped to Lutheran or Baptist or something. And then she ended up in Catholicism. And that's when she started. I was, you know, that same period, I was in my lukewarmness. So she was talking to me about Catholicism. I was still hearing Pentecostal sermons at church. So I was like, I don't know, like, who's telling the truth. So I just kind of shut everything off and started to study. And that's when I found those videos from Walter Veith. And that's when that led to Torah. And I was like, I told God, whatever is the truth, whether it's Pentecostal or Catholicism, whatever it is, I want to be where Jesus is. I want to be where the truth is. I want to please God. I want to live my life in that way, whatever it is. So the fact that I only gave him two options, Pentecostal or Catholicism, but then I said, whatever it is, God was like, bingo, those words right there, that's the loophole, because you said whatever it is, even though
And
you didn't name those.
were you going to church during all of this? Like, did you leave the
Yeah, I was still
Pentecostal?
attending church, but I knew that, like, you know, I wasn't where things should be. You know what I mean? Like prayer life and fasting and studying more than, you know, I was. So God was like, okay, you said whatever it is, I got you. You know, like he was like, that's the loophole that you just asked for in prayer. Plus you said to give you wisdom from James 1:5. Boom. And literally after that prayer, within the next few weeks, it was like somebody changed my Bible out. I'm like, now it doesn't look like Chinese or hieroglyphics anymore. I can actually understand most of it. It was like it was just opened. And I think a lot of times people don't really do that prayer. Like it's a promise that's in the Bible. And I think people don't like tell that to God. They just kind of like, oh, I can study it. I can do it on my own. I can just like my human understanding will understand it. No, it's a spiritual book. It's like from an eternal being that is infinitely wiser than every human who ever lived put together, plus the angels put together, and then times a million. Like, you know what I mean? So we need his help to understand it. He's the one who wrote it. He's the one who inspired it. He knows what it means, you know, especially when we take it all together and not just the New Testament. Imagine just trying to learn the New Testament without the Old Testament. Like it's not even going to make sense, even with the Holy Spirit. Like we're cutting him off. We're like, all right, talk. And then he starts to talk and we're like, but cut off right there. We can't cut him off. We have to hear the entire thing that he says to us, right? So, what was I saying? I lost my train of thought for a second. I was saying something before this. Ah. I was talking about, oh yeah, so a lot of people don't do that prayer for God to open up their understanding on the word. They just kind of, you know, do it with their own understanding or do it with the understanding of people around them. So like, oh, I can study it with the bias of what my pastor said this past Sunday. You know, like based on what he said, that's how I will interpret it. Instead of saying, my pastor's great, he may seem genuine, he may seem godly, but I'm just going to study this and pretend he didn't say anything so I can see if he's right. Let me just double check if he's right. If he is, great, no harm done. If he's not, there's a problem. We need to fix it. You know, but they don't really do that. And I mean, that's obviously the same kind of thing I did too when I was in church because I was a young kid. I mean, when you're a kid and you're a teenager and a young adult, that's kind of how your brain works. You're trusting your authorities. But when I became an adult for myself, I'm like, well, I can't just do that anymore. Like, you know, there's already, even within Pentecostalism, there's already sections and, you know, kind of riffs and cliques, I guess, if that makes sense. You know, like even within Pentecostalism, there's different beliefs. You know, there's like, you can only wear a skirt if you're a woman, or you can be a woman pastor, or things like this. Like there's so many things even within there. I'm like, I need to study this on my own to see what I need to do, how I need to please the
So, but was
Lord,
that your
even if I,
upbringing? Like, were you raised in the Pentecostal church from the age of being
yeah,
a little kid? Yeah.
yeah, basically, yeah. So my mom, I think she grew up Catholic, not like religiously Catholic, but kind of just by title. They would go, I think, for the special services and things like that. And she fell in love with reading the Bible when she was young, but her mom told her, "Oh, don't read that. It's gonna drive you crazy." I never understood that comment when she told me that. But so she actually didn't listen to that. She kept studying. She loved it. She loved the adventure, the romance, everything that was in it, the action. So when she grew older, she kind of fell out of it. Like, she went to the world and lived a lifestyle that wasn't godly and stuff like that. But as she became a young adult, she kind of went back into it, and then she had us. And I think also because my biological dad, he was very abusive and stuff like that. So she was like within an inch of her life one time, but he couldn't find the knife. Like, it was underneath the seat in the car. So she was praying to God, like, to save her, because who will raise her kids in the Lord? If he saves her, she will bring us up in church. So that's when he couldn't find the knife, and he dropped her off in the middle of nowhere. She had like 3 bald patches from him pulling out hair, and she has hearing loss in one ear from that day, still to this day. So, I don't know if I think after that he got arrested, but he was always in and out of jail, in and out of drugs, and he ended up passing away like a few years ago from a drug overdose. So we didn't really have a close relationship. On top of the fact that he sexually abused me when I was a kid, so we weren't really like close. Yeah, there's a lot there. So I've had to work through a lot of things, like that. I had to work on forgiveness, and things like that. So even before I was in Torah, I was like, God was working on my heart, like on forgiveness and things like that. So with my mom, like I said, she promised God to raise us in the church because of what happened with my dad and stuff. So she ran away with us to Puerto Rico for a few years, and then we came back to New York, and then we came to Connecticut, and we've been here ever since. So I've been in Connecticut since like I don't know, I think 4th grade, something like that.
Okay. And
Yeah.
you have your own family, right? You have a daughter?
Yeah, I have a husband and I have 1 kid. I would like to have more, but whatever God wants for me.
Wow.
And
So what is your family life look then? Is your husband on the same page? Are you raising your daughter this way? What is the
yes. So at the beginning, about 2 years ago, when I was looking into all this, first I was like kind of like in shock and in denial a little bit. And I was like, what am I going to do? Because the people around me are probably going to think I'm just crazy. I just found something on Google. I'm just in a cult that somebody brainwashed me into, like they still think that. But, I was thinking like, what am I going to do? And so the first person I told was my husband. And he was kind of like, yeah, right. Like, you're telling me you know better than all these people. My dad, who's a pastor, and the evangelists and prophets and teachers and this and that. And I was like, it's not that I know better. It's not that I'm better than anyone. I don't know what happened. I just asked God to show me the truth, and he did. And then me talking to him, he kind of like didn't really believe it, but I'm his wife, and he's like probably like, she's not doing it on purpose, but maybe she's mistaken. You know what I mean? Because he knows I wouldn't lie to him about that and just start making up random things, like, you know what I mean? So he's like, she's probably like not lying to me. She's not kidding
what
with
was
me,
it
but
what was it specifically that you came to him with that he thought
yeah,
maybe
like just different things in Torah, like this Sabbath is this, and this is still stands. The Torah still stands. You know what I mean? Like, so those kind of things is kind of hard to accept. Like, no more pork. We have to rest on Sabbath. We have to keep the feast days. It's kind of a whole culture shock, basically, from what we grew up in, where it was like Christmas, Easter, Halloween. Which even then, even being in antinomianism, I never really liked those holidays anyway, because I knew the background of them was pagan. So even then, I was already an outcast. Like I said, there's already these sections in Pentecostalism where there's like, people call it legalism, to avoid the holidays and to wear only skirts. And I was like, well, I don't wear the only skirts, but I do avoid those holidays because they just factually are pagan. They're not from God. But I didn't have an alternative for them either. I didn't know about the feast yet. You know what I mean? Like, hey, this is from God. How about try this? But now I do. So, I would be telling my husband certain things. And he already was on board with the pagan holidays, when we were both antinomian. So we were already on board with that and how to raise our child not doing those things. And then the Torah thing is where it kind of clashed a little bit, But what really helped actually was not only seeing me live it out. I didn't force him. I just showed him and I was telling him what I found, seeing me live it out, but also showing him the evidence in scripture. Like I would show him this verse. Look what it says right here. He's like, wow, it actually says it plain as day right there. So the word is living and it comes back to God, with fruit. It's not going to come back to him empty, especially if the soil is correct, right? If the soil is humble, it's ready to receive something. So he wanted to know the truth. He just didn't believe it because he wasn't seeing the evidence. He wasn't seeing much. It was just like me telling him, this is the truth. You know what I mean? So his soil was ready to receive, but there was not really a seed there, which we know the word is the seed. You know what I mean? So the word is what I had to really put in there. And also my testimony to really like show him, I actually believe in this too. Because if you tell somebody, I believe that it's going to rain tomorrow, but then you go outside and you didn't bring your umbrella, the person is going to be like, this person does not believe it's going to rain. Like they're not acting like it's going to rain, so our actions have to show what we're saying with our mouth to people. So they're going to see, oh yeah, they actually do believe that. They actually do believe it's going to rain today. They brought their umbrella. They're, matching their actions with their words. So that's what I was trying to show as well with keeping the Sabbath and trying to cut out the stuff with pork and stuff like that, or anything that had unclean ingredients, because apparently bugs are used for red dye and bugs are used for shiny coating on candy and, so many things. And gelatin is used in marshmallows. So like it was just a whole thing of like learning how to read labels and what means what and what is where, you know what I mean? And then also at the same time trying to learn about the feast days and trying to keep those to the best of our ability, because, not only are we not over there in Israel, but it's kind of hard to do it the first year that you learn about it as well. Like I'm not prepared at all. I don't even have lamb. I've never had lamb in my life. I don't know what the heck to do with a booth outside. You know
So
what I mean?
is he helping you with all that? Like, are you kind of orchestrating and he's going along with it, or is he fully on board
Yeah,
and
for now, it's me more taking the lead on it. I would love if he were to take more of the lead on it and I'd be the one learning more from him. But since I'm the one that fell in love with this and I'm really a Bible nerd to begin with, I've always been that way. He's more a musician. In church, he's a musician. So that's more his powerhouse, right? Like he worships God with that talent that God gave him. He plays piano, drums, and bass. He's like a one-man band.
so are you guys able to go to church? Do you have a congregation that you go to?
So when I first learned all these things, I stopped going to my father-in-law's church. I just stopped going to all churches. And I was like, I don't think that he's a false teacher on purpose. I think he's very genuine. I think he's humble. And that's one of the things I loved about Walter Veith. He really drilled it into my head to be graceful about this walk. Because even though he wasn't teaching me Torah, he was still teaching me, when you know the truth about something, you still have to remember that the ones who raised you, not all of them were false. It was just that they were taught wrong and they passed it forward. So really kind of look at them through those eyes. And that really helped me. I'm like so thankful to God for who he put across my path to teach me. Even if, like I said, they were Seventh-day Adventists, but their heart is like Jesus-like, you know what I mean? So I just took the good and left the bad, like I said. And so I thought about like, I know that he's genuine, but genuine doesn't mean that he's telling the truth. You know what I mean? Like they're still preaching not the truth there. And I don't want to be there for several reasons. Being under the authority of someone who's not preaching the truth. And also because hearing the sermons every week, I'm going to come out of church upset instead of refreshed and nourished. So I can just do better at home and have that peace and that presence with God and learn the truth and be refreshed for real and be nourished instead of being at church, learning half truths or full out lies, because sometimes they're not afraid to say, oh, the law is done away with or whatever. Like they're not afraid to say that. And my face is kind of not one that hides things very well. So, I wouldn't be it wouldn't keep the peace is what I'm trying to say if I were to keep going. But obviously we still hang out with them at their house. We go with them to events, or I go to services sometimes for special occasions like his birthday or a pastor's day or whatever, just to show them honor for the position that they're in and stuff like that. But, I don't go there regularly, but my husband, since he's his son and he's a musician and they don't really have someone to play the piano, he goes to help with the piano and whatever they need for music stuff. But he doesn't see himself as like a member. He's just there helping his dad until they figure something out or whatever. But lately, I've been having some hope that things are changing because 2 years ago when I was having this journey, I also, after my husband, I told my sister-in-law. So she married into the family with my husband's brother, Elia. And I would be talking with her about these things, and I felt like she was kind of listening and a little bit receptive, but she was more like annoyed that she had to listen. I felt like that was the vibe, like when are you going to be finished talking? I don't really believe what you're saying, but I'm just being polite. And I was like, trying to really tell her, and I was like urgent about it, like, you really have to listen to this. I love you. And I felt like she was the one that I could work on first. Like, she would be more receptive. She's more, like, she wouldn't shut me off right away and be like, oh, shut up, you're in a cult, I don't want to hear it. She didn't do any of that, which I was thankful for. And I was right, because 2 years later, all of that finally paid off. Talking to her, she said that someone else she knew from years ago talked to her right after I did. One day, God woke me up. I think it was on a Saturday. He woke me up. I saw a post from Yael's Letters. I don't know if you know that page. Yael's Letters. Oh my God, she's amazing. So I saw one of her posts, and I was like crying in my bed, and I was like, I felt like this feeling in my heart, like burning. And I heard my sister-in-law's name, like, you need to go over there and talk to her right now. And I was like, oh, okay. I was texting her, and I was like, it's urgent. I'm crying. I need to see you today. And she was like, okay, what's up? And I was like, I have to talk to you. So I went and told her, and I had to go to dialysis after I was talking to her. So I was kind of cut off. But everything I said was exactly perfect. I was like, I needed to keep going, but I have to leave. I'm going to be late. But everything I said, God wanted it that way. He didn't want any less. He didn't want any more, because everything I told her, her friend that she knows from years ago talked to her and told her exactly word for word everything I had told her. And she was like, Barry. And she texted me, and she's like, you never guess what. And I was like, what? I was like, I didn't even know what was happening. I didn't think that she would tell me, you were right. I owe you an apology. I owe you a hug. Like, she was crying, texting over the phone, that all these things. She's like, I feel like God was already trying to tell me, but I've been stubborn. Like, it was about letting go of Christmas, and that the Torah still stands and stuff like that. So now I have another family member on board, right? And so then she told her ex-stepmother, because they're still close, and her ex-stepmother as well is on board with it. Like, she's like, yeah, I knew some of these things already, but like, it makes sense what you're saying, you know what I mean? Like, and I never wanted to say anything to the church. So I was like, so you already thought these things a little bit, but you didn't want to say anything? So two people already, like, I got two for one.
So this
And
must have been if you're talking about Yael's letters, like this is new. This must have just happened.
yeah, she literally, like, a few weeks ago, my sister-in-law texted me, and it was after 2 years of working on her gently, like, me living it out, but also telling her this information, sending her a few posts here and there, like, of well explained things about it. And so it was just like amazing to even know. I was like, sometimes I felt crazy. I was like, God, is it you? Is it just me that I just want to talk to her? That, like, people are going to be look at her thinking she's so spiritual to get God sent her here. Like, I felt like that. Like, my flesh, or maybe the enemy, was telling me, people are just thinking you're crazy. No one's going to listen to you. Just stop already. And sometimes, like, the comments in the family from my in-laws would get so bad that I would be like, you know what? Then maybe I am the problem. Maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am stupid. So just God take me to the grave or whatever, and just I'll be out of your life if I'm the problem. Like, I would be so upset, thinking, like, it was like gaslighting me, right? That was like the crazy one, because it's such a narrow path. Like, barely anyone is on it, but it's the truth. But at the same time, all the voices saying no makes you, like, the tiniest bit second guess it, and you're like, maybe I am wrong, maybe I misinterpreted it somewhere, let me go double check. Like, you're like just driving yourself crazy, going back and forth. But at this point, I've seen so much evidence that I think nothing will ever get me to convince me that this is not the truth. And in fact, like I said, I learned about that we're going to be here for the tribulation, and I've been mentally preparing myself. No matter what they do to me, if they torture me, if they threaten my kids or my family or whatever, I'm not giving this up, because I know that I shouldn't be afraid of man, what they can do in my body or my children's body or my husband's body, because God has the power to raise us up again. So just like the apostles, when they learned the truth and they were empowered by the Spirit, the same Spirit we have, that in that moment, if they're killing us or whatever the case may be, that we're going to have that same empowerment to say, I'm not giving this up. Do whatever you want. Do what you have to do. I'll do what I have to do. But nothing is going to get me out of that. And obviously, in my human moments, I fear, like, dying, especially a painful, slow death, because that's just a human thing to feel. No one likes that unless they're sadistic. But, in my humanness, I fear the death part of it. But the spirit part of me is willing, right? The spirit part of me is like, I am ready to go all the way for Jesus when that time comes. Like, whatever it takes. And in the moment it comes, when we get there, we get there. But for now, I'm just dead set on this. And that's another reason why I say that it's important to learn that we're going to be here for the tribulation, because it helps us to mentally prepare. If we think that we're going to escape out of it, we have a rude awakening when that time comes, for real. Because we're thinking like, oh no, like I actually stood behind, like everyone stood behind. Stop it. You know, everyone is here. No one got taken anywhere, you know, including the fact that Jesus said to his disciples, you know, one will be taken, one will be left behind. And they specifically asked him, where will the one be taken to? And he said, where the dead body is, there the vultures will gather. And before I was like, what kind of random answer? But after, when I studied that, I'm like, oh, their life is taken. The wicked at his coming, the word coming out of his mouth judges them, and they're wicked and they get killed on the spot. Like, that's not good. You don't want to be the one that's taken. Your life is taken. That's not good. You know, but we were taught growing up that you want to be taken out of here because everyone who's left behind is going to be, you know, sorry, I got a phone call. Everyone who's left behind is going to be, you know, tortured and the Antichrist and 7 years and all these things. So, you know, learning that we're
But
going to be
is
here.
that speaking of doctrines of the church you grew up in, does Pentecostalism teach pre-tribulation rapture too?
Yeah. Yeah, they believe in pre-tribulation rapture, that the tribulation is going to be 7 years because they're misusing Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy, right? Because the 70 weeks was about the Messiah's first coming, which already happened. And so they're using that. I think they think that it's been 69 weeks and then a pause of 2,000 years and then the 70th week. And it's like the Bible doesn't say that. It says at the 69th week is when the Messiah comes, and it's not that he's born at the 69th week, but he shows up on the scene at the 69th week. You know, like when he gets baptized and starts his ministry, that's the 69th week. And then the 70th week, that whole thing is the 7 years of his ministry, but it's only halfway because it says in the middle of that week, he's cut off, you know, which is the crucifixion. And he dies not for himself, but for others, for the many. So this is literally the 70 weeks is about the Messiah, and they're using it here to
So, for
say,
example, that I mean, that's a different interpretation than I've heard. And again, I didn't go to church, and certainly didn't go to a Pentecostal church. So, how do you do the majority of the studying? Are you taking good chunks of time out of your day to sit down and actually be in the Word? Is that
yeah,
your
so
passion?
since I'm a dialysis patient, which I think we can talk about that topic next, since I'm a dialysis patient, I really just have a lot of time on my hands. I'm a stay-at-home mom because I can't really work a normal job. I tried several times, but because of different symptoms and the schedule with dialysis and all these things, I haven't been able to like really keep a normal job. So I just kind of stay home. I've been homeschooling my daughter, and I used like as much time that I feel well to really, you know, dig into the word. Whenever my spirit is feeling hungry, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you know, I need to kind of do another big meal, because you know how like there's milk and then there's meat. So milk topics you can do a lot of them because they're simple to digest, right? But meat topics you can spend a little bit more time digesting, thinking about it, telling others about it. So I kind of like every once in a while have that big plate of like a meat topic in the word, you know what I mean? Like, and it's just all in there. And there's this running joke in my family that I'm a Dory, so I have a really bad memory. But when it comes to scripture and someone needs advice, scriptures are just coming to my mind. And I'm like, that's how I know the word is true, when it says he will lead us into all truth and bring to our remembrance everything that we've learned. Because I literally cannot remember what I even had for dinner yesterday, but I can remember so many passages. Like maybe not the exact book and chapter and verse, but like what it says. And I'll be like, the Bible says this. So if I need to type it and I need to actually have the reference, I just type it into Google, the few words that I remember, and it gives me the verse. Okay, here's the whole thing. Boom. Because it already popped up. Like, this is what the person needs to hear. This is what it is. Here it is. Boom. So, like I said, I've just seen like God work in that kind of way. I don't hear him audibly, but I just kind of get like this thing impressed in my heart. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like this thing. This is what you have to do. You know, I don't know really how to explain it, but maybe others do. And I even try to explain to people that hearing God's voice audibly is so rare. Even in the Old Testament, it was like God chose specific prophets or specific people to talk to, and then he sent them to talk to the bigger crowds. So I think this whole Pentecostal charismatic thing nowadays, where everyone is hearing from, you know, the Lord, thus says the Lord, I hear him audibly all the time. I don't think that's the
Oh,
case. I
see,
think,
I didn't know. The experience I have with people being a little freaky deaky with stuff like that have been people who have come more from like like these mega churches, like the New Apostolic
yeah,
Reformation.
yeah,
So
that's basically
they say
charismatic.
that they're non-denominational, but it feels like Pentecostalism. There are
Exactly.
like boot camps for learning the gifts of the
Hmm.
Spirit.
Yeah, they're very centered on like the prophecy part of it and tongues and things like that. So that's what we would call charismatic, you know? So Pentecostals have charismatic in them, but I guess non-denominational big churches are, they just like to identify as charismatic more instead of Pentecostal, you know? Because Pentecostal has like this what is it called? Like this connotation, I guess, of legalism. It has like this connotation of, oh, you like skirts, you like to speak in tongues, you like to shake your bun around and when you're dancing in the spirit, you know, so it has like that connotation of like the weirdos, or they call them the hallelujahs, you know. Or in Spanish, they call them rajatablas. Rajatabla is like when you take a wooden board and you chop it with like a karate chop. So it means like you're so strict, you just chop a karate board in half. So that's what rajatabla means. Like they
Uh-huh.
really are seen as legalist,
So
you know?
did you grow up in the States, or like you mentioned you had gone back to Puerto Rico? Were you born in Puerto Rico or in the States?
Um, no, I was born in New York, but my mom ran away with us to Puerto Rico, trying to get away from my dad. So we were there for a
Mhm.
few years. I think I went over there around 10 months, and then I came to the States when I was 6 or 7. So I was there just for a few years, and then the rest was in the US.
And you were going to talk about, you've referenced a few times that you're a dialysis patient, so
Yeah.
I'm wondering, diagnosis wise, what happened and how maybe this has played a part in your faith journey, if at all.
Yeah, so it was about 2016, I would say, late 2016, maybe around there. I was in high school, I think as a junior, yeah, as a junior, and I fell into like sexual sin, like fornication. I was living with this guy, and we had a relationship for a few months, I think almost a year, but I was living in his house, and that's when I got sick towards the beginning of 2017, which would be the end of my senior year. It was like the spring. I was getting migraines and vomiting and like itchiness on my legs and back, but no rash. So it was like the weirdest thing ever. And from the spring all the way till November is when they finally realized, like, oh, you have kidney failure. It's due to lupus, yada, yada, yada. So I ended up like, being on prednisone so they could stop the progression of it, I guess, like kind of calm the immune system. Because lupus is like an autoimmune disease that attacks the body's own cells. Because it's thinking like, this is a foreign thing, but it's not. It's my own body. So for everyone, lupus is different. Some people it just kind of gives them like a skin rash and joint pain. I didn't have any of that, so they didn't know. And some people it could attack your heart. So my great aunt on my dad's side, she died from lupus attacking her heart at like 62 years old, I want to say. So I think lupus runs in the family, but for me, it was with my kidneys, unfortunately. And I didn't know how important the kidneys can be to the body. Apparently, it removes fluid and extra toxins that are in the blood. So if they're not working and fluid starts building up, it'll kind of accumulate in your lungs and in your heart. You won't be able to breathe, and that's not good. You'll have like problems from that. And if you have a buildup of toxins like potassium, and I think phosphorus is more like it can make your bones weak over time, but potassium is really the problem. Potassium can actually make your heart stop because of arrhythmia. So I forgot what potassium is called. I know it's like, I think it's a mineral or something like that. But anyway, if there's too much in your blood, it can make your heart stop. So I didn't know that it was, how much the kidneys play a role in the body. And they told me that I had like dead flesh on the kidneys, like they did a biopsy. So they're like, there's nothing that you can do to make them come back to life or whatever. It's not like they're just kidney stones or whatever. It's like they're dead. So, like I said, they tried to give me prednisone to try to stop the lupus from attacking them more. But since prednisone gave me like really bad side effects and things like that, I kind of wanted to stop them. And then that made the lupus progress a little bit more, including taking Tylenol and Advil, which I didn't know that if your kidneys are already sensitive, taking those can actually beat them up even more. So I would be taking Tylenol for the pain of the migraines only to have leg spasms and extreme nausea and cold sweats. And I was not wondering, why do I feel worse? Why do I feel worse taking Tylenol and Advil? So I thought it was an allergy, but really it was like just beating up my kidneys even more. And so I would kind of produce less urine. I started to get swollen in my legs and my face and my hands, and around the belly area and stuff like that. So they had me start dialysis finally in October of 2018. And then it was a specific type of dialysis that they do like with this clear water. Oh, can you turn that back on? Sorry, I'm on a video. Sorry, I just need the light. This one? Yeah. Yeah, that one's perfect. So the clear fluid, it's for peritoneal dialysis. Like you put it in this bag and it's like in the stomach area and you have to let the fluid dwell there so it can absorb the extra toxins from the blood. But that kind of treatment wasn't working for me, so I had to switch to hemodialysis. And so that's when they put a catheter leading into the heart. I don't know if you can see it. You kind of see the little tubes. One is red, one is blue. So it kind of leads into the heart. One of them takes out the blood into the machine to clean it, and then the other one puts in the blood back into the body, nice and clean. And it also removes the extra fluid from the body so that, you know, it doesn't accumulate, like I said. And if you stop dialysis treatment, you have about a week to live if you don't go to any treatments, because you're going to be eating food, which will accumulate the potassium and accumulate the fluid. You know what I mean? So
So
it's,
this is like it's been on my mind. Just last night I recorded a video with an herbalist sister of ours, Paula Mackey, and we were talking a little bit about this teaching of like we should not have anything to do with anything medical related because it's all sorcery. Obviously, you don't believe that.
yeah.
Um, I guess I just want to pick your brain about it, like especially coming out of the Pentecostal church, like, or again, like that NAR experience that I've had, it's been like, well, your faith just isn't strong enough, and that's why you
Yeah.
haven't been healed.
Yeah, I definitely grew up with a lot of those comments, and I felt like, what is wrong with me then? Like, do I not actually believe? Am I not a real Christian? Am I still living in some kind of secret sin? I was trying to figure out, like, what did I do wrong? How come other people are getting healed? Like, you know what I mean? Or other people get to feel this, the spirit and speak in tongues, and I know what kind of life they live. How come they get that kind of thing? You know what I mean? I was like, I'm trying here. You know what I mean? So it felt like really wrong, but I still was seeking after it. You know, I was still like, okay, how can I have more faith? Or what prophet can I talk to? I was like literally messaging sometimes prophets, can you pray for me? Because maybe I've seen you heal in services, so maybe you can do it for me. And nothing would ever happen, you know? And like, so I'm like, I don't know what's the problem. So, what was I going to say? That I grew up with that. And then, about a few years ago, the health was just kind of chaotic and things were going on. So I was begging God, like, just take me. This was before I was in Torah. So I was like, just take me, you know, like, I don't know, bring me with you. I want to just rest from all of this. And then I'm so glad that he didn't at that time, because I didn't know the truth yet, right? And I mean, we say all the time, like, we don't really know what God will do because, you know, he knows the heart and this and that. But I feel like the truth is the truth. Like, I feel like even if we say that we're genuine or whatever, he's going to say, depart from me, you who work lawlessness. Obviously, he's not going to say it with a smile on his face. It's going to, you know, he doesn't take pleasure when the wicked perish. He's not going to say it in a nice way. He's going to be probably heartbroken that he has to say that to us, but he's going to have to say it to us. So I'm so glad that he didn't let me or you know, answer those prayers of taking me at that time, because he knows what was waiting for me on this other side. And now that I found Torah and, you know, learned so much more and seen how he's moved in my life in terms of answering my prayers for knowledge, he's like, I didn't answer your prayers for healing, but I answered your prayers for spiritual healing. Now you're, you know, a better Christian. Your soul is actually healed, and that's more important to him, right? And I've come to realize that. Obviously, I still desire healing. Of course, no one wants to live this way either. But like, I've come to not be so desperate about it or begging or yelling at him to do it already, you know, like, what's wrong and all these things, and just wanting to die every 5 minutes. You know, like, sometimes I still have those moments of like, it would be nice to go to Sheol and just rest for a little bit until you come. But it's not like how it was before, you know, like kind of just in desperation. You know what I mean? I've kind of like tried to focus my mind on just evangelizing to people, trying to tell people about Torah, at least, you know, use this time in a good way, like use it usefully, right? Like, I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to say, but use this time wisely, whatever it is I have left, whatever time that he wants to give me or whatever, use it for him, right? Like, pour myself completely out in ministry for him. And I heard somebody say, even in an antinomian church, I feel like God still speaks through people. Like, they just have these little nuggets of wisdom. So I'm so glad for where I was raised, because at least it wasn't atheism, right? At least it was some kind of foundation of Christ. But there was somebody who has a testimony of their heart. Like, I think it only had 10% function. And they said this, they were like, God can do more with 10% function of a heart like that is submitted to him instead of somebody whose heart is 100% healthy but they're not submitted to him. And that like just touched me, and I still remember that line because I'm like, yeah, my kidneys, they told me, are 10% function, so God can do more with this and me submitted to him and just seeking for his truth and trying to like work for his kingdom than people who have maybe healthy kidneys that are just not doing anything for him. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm trying to at least put it, reframe it in that way, that I'm just trying to serve God with whatever it is I have. Because even if I was healthy, well, two things. Even if I was healthy, what was I going to say? Anyway, I don't know if I didn't get sick where I would be right now. Like, because I was living in fornication when I got sick. I was in the middle of it. And that dude, I thought, I kind of had like an inkling, like, he doesn't really love me. I don't know. I kind of have to fight for this. Like, he just seems kind of blah. Um, but I knew that once I got sick and he dropped me off to my mother's house for her to take care of me, like, we're not living together anymore. I just want to break up with you. I kind of knew at that time, this man does not love me. He would not be a good husband, because imagine if we had said vows to be together in sickness and in health and all these things. He would just drop me off with my mother and divorce me. So I'm so glad that even though God allowed me to live in that situation with fornication, like, he allowed it to happen for a season, but he didn't allow it to go as far as getting married. And I think, how in the story of Exodus, God kind of hardened Pharaoh's heart at the end after Pharaoh hardened it himself so many times. I think that in this situation as well, God kind of hardened that boyfriend's heart to, like, because I had been asking God, take me out of this situation of fornication, right? I had been asking him, but I didn't move myself. I didn't like do anything to help him. So God is like, well, you're asking me to take you out of there and you're not moving, so I'm going to have to intervene. And so later on, I realized that he allowed this sickness so that I could be dropped off from this dude back to my house where I should be, not in fornication, right? Like, where I should be. Even though now I'm sick, this is my consequence for living in fornication, but my soul is saved. Because, like I said, if I didn't get sick, I would probably still be there. Maybe I would have gotten pregnant by him. Maybe I would have married him, being in my dumb blindness. You know what I mean? If I didn't ask God to take me out of there, I wouldn't be here today.
So do you
I don't know if
believe,
I would be even alive.
did you just say, Barietta, that you believe that you are sick because you were living in fornication? Do you think that
I
this is a
think it's
consequence?
possibly a consequence. At least that's how I view it. I don't know if I'm wrong, right? I think it's a consequence of living in sexual sin, because sexual sin, from my knowledge, is different than the other sins because we're doing it to ourselves. And I believe that there's certain passages, I think, don't quote me, that say that sexual sin is one of the ones that brings death or something like that. I know specifically adultery. I know adultery does. I wasn't in adultery, I was in fornication. But I think another example someone had said was Jezebel was in a sick bed because of, sexual immorality. So I think I saw some passages concerning that. I haven't looked at them in a while, so maybe they're not actually that right interpretation. But like I said, from my current understanding, because of the life I was living, and also I had asked God to take me out of there but didn't do anything, I feel like maybe he allowed it to kind of get me out of there, because that was the only way that like I was probably going to get out of there, because I'm asking him, I don't want to be in here. I need you to help me. And but my thought process as well attached to that was, maybe if God helps me get out of this sin and lukewarmness, maybe the guy I'm with can also turn to Christ. But God knew he's not the one for you. So it's only you. I'm going to take you out of here. And this is what it is. You know what I mean? So I was thinking, like, get me out of the sin, get me out of the situation. I wasn't thinking get me sick and get me completely out of his life and
Yeah,
out of his
yeah, we don't
house. You
know
know what I mean?
how he's gonna work it,
Exactly,
right?
how he was going to answer it.
So then how did you meet the husband that you have now? And how long have you guys been together?
So it was the day after me and this guy officially broke up. Like, I had gone to the hospital because the breakup was so bad. I was mentally unwell. And I think that was due to a soul tie. I kind of believe in that. When you have sex, you kind of become one. And it's kind of difficult to unmesh yourself from that bond because connected physically and spiritually and stuff like that. So I was very much like tied to him. I was just like begging him to get back. And I was really messed up. I went to the hospital for a night. The day after, when I came out of the hospital, I made a post because it was National Girlfriend's Day. I remember this part so well. It was National Girlfriend's Day the next day, and I was like, National Girlfriend's Day. And I made some kind of post like complaining that, I'm not anyone's girlfriend anymore. And on this day, it's a special day. So my husband, he reached out to me and he was like, oh, are you okay? I saw your post. I just want to make sure if you're feeling fine. I'm like, yeah, I just went through a breakup and this and that. And I didn't know that he saw me in high school and he had a crush on me. So he like immediately saw his chance and was like, she's single now. So he immediately started to hang out with me. And just within a month, I told him, listen, I just got through a really bad breakup. I'm not ready to date or whatever. But just within that month of hanging out almost every single day, literally strictly platonic, but it was like a great friendship to have. God had spoken to us in a couple different ways that we're actually supposed to be together. So he gave my husband a dream. There was something about a pearl that was in his hand telling him to go left, right, straight, whatever. And then he put it on the ground and it grew into like a woman, but he couldn't see the face. It was too shiny. And someone told him in the dream, this is your wife. She's going to help guide you in life. You already know who she is. So he woke up and told me the dream. And I was like, oh, cool. It could be me, maybe because you never saw the face, but that is cool if it's us. And then after that, he's like, he only told me this dream and I didn't tell anybody. After that, he went to a church service and a woman started prophesying and telling him the exact details of the dream and said, and you know who she is. So from that point, we knew it was confirmation. And then we had another person tell us that, we're going to get married soon and stuff like that. So we're like, okay, if God wants us together. I mean, like I had never, the type of guys that I had chosen was nothing like my husband. Like, I feel like God obviously was like, you don't know how to pick right. I know how to pick right for you, right? Like anytime we pick things for ourselves, we mess it up when we stick our foot in it. So we mess it up. But he actually gives us what we need, what's perfect for us, like a blessing. So, I started to hang out with him. And just in that 1 month, I saw like the character of him, what kind of good, godly guy he was, the family that he came from and stuff like that. And even when I told my mom and stepdad, like who I was interested in and maybe that we might date, they're like, oh yeah, go for it. I was like, what have you done with my parents? You guys never liked me to date anybody. Like you guys don't even want me to date at all because you just want me to be, I don't know, single because I'm a teenager, right? Like you just don't want me to date. And they were like totally fine with it because they also knew his family, where he comes from, that he comes from like a family of pastors, of like really godly, humble people and stuff like that. So, I was like, okay, if everybody has peace, God is already confirming it. Like we've been friends for a month. I guess we'll start dating. So I think we dated for like a year and something. And then from there we got engaged and then we got married. And then we had a kid immediately, like 2 weeks within being married, we were already pregnant.
Beautiful. So that she looks like she's maybe 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah, she just turned 6 this January.
Okay. Ah, wow. That's lovely. That's such a good story. Wow.
Yeah, and also I actually got pregnant with her when I already started dialysis because when you're a dialysis patient, they really want to get you to do a transplant. So they had me going to these transplant meetings. And one of the appointments is we have to come with family. So any kind of support system, as many family members as you can. So I brought my husband and my mom. That's who could make it that day. And my mom asked them, okay, since they just got married, like recently, when should they plan for having children, before transplant or after transplant? And these people literally said before transplant. So at that time, I had like almost full trust in doctors. I was like new to all this chronic illness and being in the hospital and appointments and things like that. So I was like, okay, if they said before, then they know best. Let's plan for before. So within 2 weeks of being married, like I said, we just started to, go sick at it, basically, like trying our best, and we got it. I think obviously God allowed it for it to be that way. But I went back after getting pregnant and I told them, and I was like, since you guys said, before, and they were like, we didn't say that. I was like, my husband and my mother and me are all witnesses that you guys said that. And if you didn't say that, I wouldn't risk my life that way because I trust you guys. At that point, I trusted them. I was like, if you guys would have said no, I wouldn't have done it. But you guys said to do it, so I did it. What is going on? I feel like they treated me like a guinea pig. Like, oh, let's see what happens to a dialysis patient that gets pregnant. Like, that's what it felt like when they did that to me. And my mom and husband are witnesses that they said before. Like I said, we wouldn't have done it and risked my life or the baby's life if they had said not to do that. So, I had to go to dialysis while being pregnant. And so since there's another baby that's in there that needs the blood cleaned and stuff like that, now I needed extra dialysis time. So I had to travel like 30 minutes away to a facility to be 8 hours overnight to do dialysis, so I wouldn't have to wait during the day 8 hours. I was like, I want my day to myself. I don't mind nighttime. I could sleep through it. Let's just go for a nighttime one. And I would have to take like these medical cabs to go over there because we didn't have 2 cars, I think, at the time. So, I had to take medical cabs back and forth. And then she came out pre-me because of the situation. Like I had preeclampsia, really, really bad preeclampsia. So they needed to do emergency C-section when I was about 6.5 months pregnant. And she came out at 2 pounds, 1 ounce. And then she was in the NICU for like 3 months. But that day that I got preeclampsia, it was just onset in one day. So I told them, listen, I'm not feeling too good. Like, I think this is really bad. My blood pressure is high. I'm not feeling good. I think you need to take her out. And I asked them, is she viable to be out? If she came out now, they're like, yeah, but it's not ideal. And I was like, you need to take her out because none of us are going to survive if you don't take her out. And that was in the morning. But what they did was, you know what, let's just drug up Barry so that she can shut up and stop complaining and just calm down. But even drugged up, I kept telling them, I'm like half asleep, like, please take her out, guys. I don't feel good. Like, we're not going to make it. And I'm like talking to them all the way at nighttime at 10 p.m. The doctor comes in and says, you're right. We're going to take her out. We could have just saved all this time, guys. Like, you could have just listened to me. I know my body. I know what I'm, trying to say. And thankfully, thank God, right, that everything turned out good. They did the C-section. I healed fine. She was in the NICU. She literally was like perfect in the NICU. Like, nothing was wrong with her. She was like, she even came home 2 weeks earlier than her due date was supposed to be. So she was like beautiful, but she came home at like 4 pounds, the tiniest little thing. But now, oh my God, she's like a hurricane. Like, if nothing ever happened, she has a lot of energy. She's super intelligent, like healthy as a horse. She barely ever gets sick, except now, like these past few weeks, we got sick like back to back, but barely ever in the hospital, barely ever sick. She's like the best.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Barietta. I don't know if there's anything, that was like a whirlwind. I had a feeling you were a fast talker, but
Yeah, that's the Hispanic in me.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? I think I got like, I'm so glad that we did this because again, you don't really know who a person is when they're typing, especially,
Mhm.
smart women are smart women and you have a lot to say. And I hope that many people watch this and get to know like this sweet, kind, soft side of you. It's really,
Thank you.
really a
Yeah,
pleasure.
I would say probably the last what I have to add, concerning my daughter's NICU stay is that the entire time, the 3 months that she was there, I don't know, God gave me like this supernatural peace that she was going to be fine. I never had any doubts that she was going to die because she was so little or so young or taken out soon or she was going to have any health things or whatever. Like, literally, I think it was God supernaturally putting like a shalom over me about the situation. Like, because if it was me, I think I would probably be freaking out a little bit. I'm kind of like an overthinker and kind of like, oh, but what about this? And what would this happen? I was totally chill as a cucumber. Like, I was totally fine. I would visit her in the hospital and, try to figure out how to handle a preemie and do the breast milk stuff and all that. It was great. But other than that, I'm just thankful to God, basically, for this whole journey that I've had. I always tell people, like, when I'm telling them about, like, my experience, I tell them it's been an amazing journey. God is so good. Like, the fact that I even was shown any of this, because we have to remember that many are called, but few are chosen. So the fact that we are in this path right now is like a vindication, I guess. Like, it makes us feel confident that we are a chosen one. We are, like, even though we may stumble and mess up and whatever, we know that we're one of his, right? We know that we actually are true believers, that we're really saved. You know what I mean? Like, now I have that confidence, that assurance, that clarity, because before I didn't have that clarity. I didn't have that confidence of salvation. I was like, anxious about it. And that's not the way that we're supposed to live. We have to have that confidence, that assurity of salvation. Not that we're like once saved, always saved, but like, I am a believer of God. I know what I know. Like, I truly believe in him. My actions show that my faith is real, right? Because we should be testing ourselves. God doesn't need our works to know, right? We don't have to do a single thing for him to know who's genuine. But the works is for each other, for our other humans, including ourselves, to see, like, my actions are not lining up. I'm a fraud. I'm a fake, right? Or other people, their actions are not lining up. They're a fraud. They're a fake, at least for now. We're not saying it's like too late and you can never come, but right now, right? Like, right now, you're not true. So we should know by our actions if we're really there. And now, because of the actions, the fruit that I've shown, I know that I'm a true follower of God. And that literally, like, makes my heart just so full of joy. Like, it wants to burst with happiness to know that, because I was yearning to know that back then. And now I know it. I have the confidence of it. I have the assurity of it. You know what I mean? And so now I try to spend my time, working on my family in that regard, and even raising my daughter with it. Like you asked about earlier, I homeschool her, so I try to teach her like what God does and doesn't like. Sometimes she doesn't understand why we can't have the normal marshmallows or hot dogs, normal hot dogs like other people, or the spaghetti and meatballs, Chef Boyardee. You know what I mean? And sometimes my in-laws, they've been better about it lately, like changing things in the house for us. Like I'm really thankful that they even did that at all. They don't have to for us. But since we eat there a lot, they kind of change what they buy. But sometimes things slip their mind because they're not thinking about it as much as I am. They're not looking at the labels as deeply as I am. So sometimes things slip and they'll let her have something that I usually don't. So she says, "Oh, but they gave it to me." And I'm like, "Mommy, they made a mistake. Like they didn't, they're not supposed to, you're not supposed to have that, but it's okay. You know, we don't do that. We don't eat this." So I'm trying to raise her to the best of my ability for her to understand, you know, what kind of lifestyle this is, that we don't do Christmas, we don't do Halloween, we don't do Easter. But recently this year we did like the Feast of Booths with her outside in a little tent. She loved it. We were doing s'mores with special marshmallows that doesn't have gelatin. And so we have like, you know, she loved it because we were outside with a little bonfire and stuff. So I'm trying to teach her, you know, the feast of God and what we do. And hopefully we'll get to the Tzitzit soon and things like that. Like I really want to do the sit-sits, you know. But yeah, so I'm just trying to teach her, and hopefully my husband kind of gets more on board and start leading with it, because I would love for us both to be just really theologically sound with it, and just both, like one person works here on this family member and one person works on the other one. You know what I mean? Like it would be nice to have a little bit more support. Like he supports in what I do and believes in it, but I just want more like actual, you know what I mean? Like I don't know what, you know what I'm trying to say.
I do, and I think from what I've seen in talking with many, many women who seem to come to this before their husbands, the
Yeah.
approach that you have is the way that it's going to happen. You're not ramming it down his throat, you're not forcing
Mm-hmm.
him. He's there, you're on the same page, and
Yeah.
tranquilo.
Yeah. Yeah, and I told him too that if anything happens to me, whether it's with health stuff going on right now, because I don't know what's gonna happen with dialysis because of something that's going on that might, like, I might not be able to have treatments for much longer. So I was kind of grappling with that recently with God, like, give me strength. You know, if you do want to take me soon, like, give me strength and my family strength. But I was talking to him. I was like, if anything happens to me, I really, really need you to stick with this with Iridessa, our daughter, because, like, I want you to raise her in this, because I know my in laws are not in this walk yet. So they might give you a little hard time about vaccines or about pork or, you know, things like that. So if I'm not here to be the one to be more firm and stand in it, I need you to be the one to do that for her. You know, like I'm talking to him, like getting him ready, mentally prepared and stuff like that. And speaking of my in-law, I forgot to say this earlier. Recently, he's been making some comments that is giving me hope that he might turn to this soon. Because he said, he made a sermon one time, like recently, like a couple weeks ago, that he wants to stop doing Christmas, that it's pagan. And I'm like, this is the steps that people usually like start in to get to Torah, is getting rid of the bad stuff, right? And like wading through that. So he said, like, no more Christmas at the church. He doesn't want that. It's pagan. And then after that, like a few days after that sermon, he just randomly brings up the topic to me. I think I was studying something in my notebook or on my phone, and he said, I was thinking of doing the biblical feast because, you know, those come from God. And I was like, yes, they're not a sin to celebrate like the pagan ones are. So that's a great alternative to do because they come from God. They cannot possibly be a sin to celebrate, right? So like they came from him, from himself. Like they're not pagan. So I was like so excited that he's the one that brought this up. And then another thing that he said after that was that a lot of people have been studying Hebrew lately, like even in the Pentecostal circles, that they're studying Hebrew because they like to, oh, you know, these like learning these words from the original language, which is great. Like all the better that you guys are learning into that. So he said that he wants to start studying it too. He's like, if everybody's doing it, then I'm just going to study too. And I'm going to read. He's like, this year, because they believe in January being the new year. So he's like, this year, my goal is to read from Genesis to Revelation because I haven't done it before. And he made a comment to his son a long time ago when his son was like, why don't we read the Old Testament in church? And he was like, well, because it doesn't apply to us. And so to have him go from it doesn't apply to us to I want to read the whole thing now and wanting to do the feast days, I was like, God, I thought he was going to be the last one to join the Torah thing because he's been in this since he was young and he's double my age. So it's harder to get him out of that when he's grown up in it and been in it longer than I have. I'm only like 20 something, so it was a little bit easier to get me while I was young and impressionable to see, you know, the truth and kind of do that switch. But he's been in this so long, he tells me sometimes no one's going to convince me out of this and stuff like that. But if the fact that he wants to do the feast days and the fact that he wants to read the entire thing from beginning to end, I was like, God, I know that this is a doorway for him to get into that. And since he's the patriarch of the family, his wife, his daughter, his sons are going to come right in line after him because they trust in him. They're his pastor as well. I mean, like, you know, he's their pastor as well. So he's that authority in their life. And if he changes their lifestyle and turns to Torah, I told my husband, I have no problem going back to his church. Because, like I said, he's a humble guy. He's a great guy. He's a hardworking guy. He's a great husband, a great father, a great grandpa, amazing, like 5-star grandpa for real. So everything else is right there. If he would just teach on the Torah, I would be more than happy to be the first one in church every single day. You know what I mean? Because that's all he's missing. That's all he's literally missing, at least in my eyes. You know, God knows his heart deeper than I do. And there was one time too where he had a dream that we stood behind in the tribulation, and he was like, oh, we have to pray against it. And I was like, God is telling you, he's trying to tell you we're going to be here, not pray against being here. I was like, God is trying to, I see God speaking in him and trying to work on him. So I'm like, I have that hope. You know what I mean? Like, God is working on him. And I didn't think he'd be like, you know, my sister-in-law, her ex-stepmom, and then him. I thought it was like my sister-in-law, her ex-stepmom, the other family members, and then him last. But literally, I told Pastor Brian, I don't know if you know who that is, Pastor Brian Mojica from Massachusetts. Because we still talk sometimes, and I told him one time, I feel like he's going to take a miracle. He's going to come last. And after I said that, God was like, hold my water. Hold on. He's like, you want to see who's going to be last? I'll show you who's going to be last. So
That's
I
so
was
beautiful. But again, I think it's in large part because of your approach and how you're very firm and steady in what you believe, but you're gently guiding people, it seems, especially
yeah,
in
I
your
try to be very gracious about it. And my sister-in-law said that that's one of the things she appreciated, that I didn't like become very culty and religious towards her and like cut her off and be mean and all these things. That I kept graciously talking with her and telling her and just lovingly telling her what I found, what the evidence was, whatever, like, and living it out as well, like I said. So that kind of like helped a lot. And she said when she joined one of the Facebook groups that I'm in about Torah, she said there was people there that were just being nasty to each other. And she said, if my sister-in-law had done what you guys are talking to each other here like, I would never have come to this. I would have run the other way. And so I'm so thankful that like God put that love in me for others, for my family, to get them in this and the way that he had me do it. And obviously I wasn't perfect with it. There was some times where, you know, I get very passionate, right, about certain topics when I feel like I know something and it's the truth. And people kind of probably feel like that's annoying about me. But, you know, I just can't let it go. I'm like, I know this is the truth. I want to wake you up and shake you. You know what I mean? So that was just the love pouring out of me. I sometimes call myself the daughter of thunder. You know how Jesus called the two the sons of thunder? I'm like, yeah, if I was there in that time, he would probably group me in with those two as well. Because I'm just like, fiery about it. You know what I mean? Like if I learn something, I immediately want to tell like 30,000 people, this is what I learned. This is amazing. Look at this cute revelation. This amazing thing. Like, oh my God. You know, so I feel like some people are annoyed by it, but it is what it is. And I think I'm not going to change that. I think God uses us, our personalities, but for his good, right? He like refines it and turns it to the way it should be facing. So, you know, my personality, the way it was before, I'm still me, but I have a different message that I'm talking to people about now. You know what I mean?
He's using you, Barry. He's definitely using you.
Glory to God.
Thank you so much. It was so great to talk to you, and I look forward to seeing you online again very soon.
You too. I enjoyed this. God
Have
bless.
a great night. Thank you.
You
Bye-bye.
too.